Welcome to section 4B of the Power TARDIS build. We're going to be doing the battery holder, the 18650 battery holder on this one. 18650 batteries hold their voltage a lot better, and these are going to be wired in parallel so they will last longer. The performance is a lot better than the AA batteries, but everybody's got AA's, whereas only us more extreme hobbyists have the 18650s. So here we're going. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking the scrap leads from doing either the speaker or the USB connector. The scrap leads I took off from the pre-pinned ends, or the non-pre-pinned ends. And I'm going to use that to join the tabs on each side of the battery holder so that the batteries will be connected in parallel. We have a surface mount. These tabs are for surface mounting. And we're not going to be soldering it into the plastic brain box, of course, but we will be using them to attach the wiring. So first I'm going to, before trying to size it, I'm just going to get one end of the leads taken care of. I'm going to strip, twist, and tin each of those ends once that iron is heated up. I like to add the flux so that it takes the solder nice and easy. Some wires will take it without the flux, some will not. And I'd rather not take chances. And I really like tinning all of them. Oh, that didn't turn on. There you go, get my preset up to 3030. This is the Finrisi HS-02A. This is my level up iron. I do like it a lot. I don't have a lot of various iron experiences, but I do like this thing a lot. I like the tips on them. They're kind of pricey. I think they were like $4.50 a piece. Okay, and I got that one done. And we're gonna twist, flux, and tin this other. Yeah, I still got enough solder on there. Yeah, maybe a little more. You can see it's changed color. It's a little stiffer. Now I'm gonna be testing with the what spacing. I haven't actually tested this to figure out exactly what it should be to give you something solid. So I'm just going to wing it right there. I'm just going to cut off some extra so I have extra lead going through the tab into the other underside. And there. I'm going to strip that end. You can use the good old-fashioned strippers too. Let's just start eyeballing it. I like to have something that's consistent. Strip, flux, strip, twist, flux, and tin. I gotta keep remembering that mantra as it's repeated throughout the build guide. So I figure I might as well try to get it incorporated into these videos. Now I'm gonna put one lead through the hole in one tab, the other end of the lead through there. So now we're establishing our positive side. And for this portion, I'm gonna put down an extra mat because I like this pretty blue mat. I don't want to mar it up, but I also don't want to get out a battery holder. So I'm just going to put something else down and apply some solder. And once I can find the center of the video here. And let's see if I can zoom this in for you. I know these videos take a little bit longer because I fuss like this and it's unnecessary. Oh yeah. Before I try adding solder, I'm going to take my tin, my stick, and just swab some more flux. I want to swab flux on the pads, so that those pads absolutely take the solder easily as well. And now I'm going to heat up the pad. And everything's going all over the place. I'm trying to find the center. And it's close enough. Get extra wire. So now I'm going to heat the tab and then apply a lot of solder. And that solder is going to go down through the hole as well. And then I'll hit the other side in a moment after I get this other tab. Heat the tab with the iron and then start getting lots of solder on there. And you can see we got a nice mound of solder on that tab, on both of the tabs. I'm just going to flip it over here and hit the underside just to make sure and get extra solder on. There we go. And heat the bottom of this other tab near the wire. Yeah, that sucker is not going anywhere. So that's one side done. And I'm going to trim off the ends so it doesn't stick out past the tab, give it a bit of a cleaner look. we go. And now we're going to do the other side. I've already done one end of the dark lead. So now I'm going to see if it'll go through. Yep, it goes through the tab. And I'm just going to eyeball it and cut off so I know I've got surplus. There. And now strip, twist, flux, and tin. I'm just going to dip that wire into the, dip those leads into my flux. I didn't like getting a tub of flux that had like gone into the lid as well as in the tub because it was delivered in the summer, but it turns out I really like just dipping stuff in there. Okay. That black lead is tinned. There are plus and minus markings in the SMD 18650 battery holders. But if you look on one side, it's plus, and on the opposite side right here, it's minus. So these are, it's marked as if you were going to be doing this in series, but that's not how we're using it. So it doesn't really matter. It does not matter at all which side is positive or negative. They'll both work the same. And you see I've got a little extra wire on there. Or so it's a little bit longer than the last one was, so it kind of rises up, but that's not a problem. It won't interfere with anything. So I'm going to set this down here, and I'm going to take my swab, which also has flux on it, and just, I guess I could have swabbed it before I put the wire in there. Yeah. And now I'm going to heat that up and then add some flux. I know it looks janky at first. Okay, I know it looked janky. Know at first about it. There we go. And that'll hold the leads in there. And I'm going to flip it over. And you know what? Why don't I give a little swab here on the bottom of these pads. They may take solder without the flux, but flux makes everything easier. Just feed a little solder onto there. Give it a second to heat and melt everywhere and bond. There we go. And going to clip off the ends of this guy. Kind of hard to find where the center of the video is as I'm doing this. I have not practiced in any way. So now we've established the ground side and the positive side. When we put the batteries in, we're going to put them in the same orientation with the button on the positive side, the light colored wire side. And they'll be connected in parallel. It'll be charged up to 4.1 volts. And then as it drains down, you'll still provide plenty of voltage down to about the same level as the batteries will before you get the low battery indication. Now we're going to be soldering the leads onto the battery holder. Going to start with the black side, the far side, because it might be considered the trickier one. I'm basically going to eyeball this and see how much lead I want. The end of the lead soldered onto the tab here. Doesn't need to be soldered to both tabs because they're already joined by that short jumper. Whoops. And now I'm going to bring it out to a corner here, and then, you know what, that looks like about 4 inches. I'm going to call that good. It's probably closer to 5 inches, but that's all right. And then I'm going to be taking the positive lead that's on this side. I want both the pinned ends to come out to the same length, so I'm going to match them up and then see where I need to cut off here the positive lead so I have enough lead to solder it onto that tab. And it's right about there. So cut that off. And yeah, that's enough lead. That's about 1/4 inch. Strip, twist, gonna flux, just dip it into my flux. Been a few minutes, gonna add some solder to my tip and then run it on the underside, heat the wire, and then the solder flows onto the bare leads because of that flux that I used. Now I'm just gonna solder that lead to that tab where it's coming out there. It should be pretty easy. There's already plenty of solder on there. I'm going to dab a little extra on the tip of my iron and just hold on there for a second and then take it away. And if you look at that, we'll zoom in. You'll see it's there we go. I don't know how I'm going to move this if I can move it properly. Boop, boop, boop. Okay. Never mind. Maybe there we go. You can see from the joint right here, it just melted right into there. So that lead is attached very well. And I'm going to zoom back out and do the other one. Hopefully on camera. Twist it around. You can generally orient stuff so it's easiest to work with. I'm going to take the bare lead end. Yeah, there we go. The bare lead end. I haven't stripped this one yet. So I know that spacing was already just right because I'd done it for this one. So I'm just going to solder. I'm not going to bother cutting it off because it's already got some bare lead on there. So I'm just going to leave it right there as it is and add some solder. Press it on there, let it cool. Hopefully it stays in place. Nah, that was terrible. It's off to the side. I'm going to redo that. But in a manner that you can see it. Hopefully without my arm in the way. It's kind of a tight space, and I don't want to try zooming in because I am terrible at zooming this thing. There we go. So I'll get that kind of centered, and then let's zoom it in and see what it looks like. So right over here is where the joint is. Yeah, okay. Right here's where it's joined in. I can see with my glasses, with my eyes, that it's soldered in there just fine. Now, if we look at this whole contraption with the battery holder, one lead is much longer than the other. Yeah, let's see if you can see the difference. In the guide, I mentioned a couple inches. That may be like 2 or 3 inches. So that when we're going to hot glue these leads, this black lead, the dark lead, to the corner, and in fact the light colored lead too. So they meet at the corner, and when they come out to the same distance. If you don't already have experience using the 18650 batteries or lithium-ion batteries, please don't request those if you have not ordered the kit yet. Just stick with the AA's. For the 18650s, you probably recognize this this charging module. You don't even need all the pins on there. You would just plug, this is a micro USB version, so micro USB, and you would just solder on the header pins for the battery connector. You probably already have these. The nice thing is about these, the DuPont connectors that, or not DuPont, the JST-XH connectors that these pins go into, they fit very well. If you use DuPont connectors from the charging board, you use a female on this end and a male on the other end. The male DuPont connectors go into the holes for these JST-XH connectors really well. So to charge the batteries later, all you need to do is disconnect the USB connector from the circuit board and then use some jumpers from your charging board into the holes of this guy for charge up the batteries. And that way you don't have to remove the batteries from the holder. It can all stay in situ, and all you're doing is removing the cover and separating the USB connector and then charging those up overnight. One last step before I hot glue these wires into place on the holder is, if you might be able to see here, because we soldered on the bottom, the solder and the tabs may not be flat to the battery holder where it's going to be velcroed or stuckied into the battery box. So I like to bend the tabs a little bit, bend the little tabs upward so that the battery box itself sits flat even if the tabs are up, because the tabs aren't really necessary to make contact with the plastic. And I see there is a black nub right there. You see it? There's a little black nub at one corner of the bottom of the battery box. So that might be a neat idea to cut that little black nub off right there. Cut that off so the rest of the box can sit flush against the brain, inside of the brain box once you have the Velcro on there. But I also suspect that that Velcro is going to raise it enough that that little black nub's not going to make a difference. And here we go. I've hot glued the battery holder. So starting from the negative side with the longer wire, see if we can get that on camera. I've hot glued the jumper wire to the case as well as near the junction, so it doesn't move around any. We don't want to create an extra additional stress that'll cause the wires to break or separate. So I've just attached it there. I've put hot glue on both of the corners where it comes around, as well as near the other end, so it holds it into place. I've also applied hot glue to the positive lead jumper at the tabs and near the box so that this red lead does not wiggle and separate at the joint, at the weld. So the last step is, you see these two guys are coming out away from the box. There we go. And I'm going to zoom out. And I just had this idea. I've not done this before, so I'm going to give this a go. You see they come out, and we're going to be putting the connector on later near the end of the build. Again, just like the battery box, you're using one of these. Do not put the connector housing on the end of the leads yet, because you're going to be using these leads to test connections and power and stuff, fun stuff later. But I do use this 4mm, the red heat shrink in the kit. And so I'm going to include an extra piece if this works out. I'm going to slip this over both of these pins and wires, leads, and right up to the battery box there. And that looks like it holds it really well in place. So in addition to the connector holding those leads together at the pinned end, I'm going to have this heat shrink right in here holding these wires together on the battery holder side. I've already turned the temp of my iron down to about 230, and it's cooled off. And I'm just running the side of it, just running the cooler side of the head along the heat shrink. I'm kind of sliding it towards the battery box, so I don't need to hold it with my fingers because these pieces are shorter. So there we go. I can see it's kind of shrunk plenty. Get it at the edges without touching the, it's not quite holding in there, without touching the insulation of the wires themselves. So this way it's keeping now, instead of them bowing out in the middle when it's inside the brain box, they'll actually be run together. And that actually feels like it's holding well enough. You can just stop it with a little bit more hot glue at the heat shrink if it's not holding them tight enough. But this seems to work. This one seems to work really well. So there's your build for the 18650 battery holder. Remember, do not put the housing on because we're going to be using it with the batteries in here to test later on.